AITA for what I did after skipping my nightly broth and discovering my husband's dark secret? My name is Sophia Reynolds. The pregnancy test changed everything. Marcus, my husband, shouted with joy. His happiness was immense. The reaction of his brothers surprised me. Brandon and Jason, we have never been close. They live on the other side of town, on the family vineyard property. They are serious men. Now they come every night. At exactly 9 o'clock they bring a ceramic bowl of chicken broth. For the air, Marcus says. The first time it touched me. It is not necessary, I said. Brandon handed me the bowl. His fingers were cold. It is our obligation, he said. Jason smiled but without warmth. Marcus, serve the broth. You have to drink it all. Every night. His tone was sweet but firm. Thus the ritual began. The broth is thick, with an intense herbal flavor. Herbs from the hills, Marcus explains. I drink but something bothers me. Their stares. It happens while I drink the broth. The three of them speak in low voices, but I feel their gazes fixed on me, on my belly. One night I looked up and he quickly looked away. Jason was watching my lips. I felt a chill. What is wrong, honey? Marcus asked. Nothing. The broth tastes very strong. There was a thick silence. It is the herbs, Jason said. It strengthens the blood. Marcus stroked my hair. Trust us. Everything is for you. I nodded. I finished the broth. That night I dreamed of black roots. The ritual continued. Their looks became more obvious. They exchanged gestures. A wink. A nod of the head. It is a mute language I do not understand. Today I went to the town square. I needed air. I sat on a bench. Old Gladys approached. Everyone avoids her. They say she is crazy. She sat next to me. Her gray eyes fixed on my belly. The child is growing, she murmured. Yes, I said uncomfortably. They bring you the broth. The night broth. I froze. How does she know? She let out a dry laugh. Family. She pronounced the word with contempt. Listen, girl, I also drank that broth a long time ago. What do you mean? She leaned in. Her breath was warm. This family, the Reynolds, have dark secrets. Be careful with what is kept in the winery buildings and be careful with what you drink. Her cold fingers touched my hand. The first child, always the first child. She got up and left. I was left trembling. I returned home. Marcus was already there. Where were you? In the town square. With that crazy old woman Gladys, he said. Do not talk to her. She speaks nonsense. I just said hello, I lied. He hugged me. I love you. We do everything for you. I nodded, but his embrace no longer gave me security. At 9 o'clock, the knock on the door. Brandon and Jason. The steaming bowl. Today we added a special root, Brandon said. It gives a lot of strength. Marcus served the bowl. The broth looked darker. Drink, honey. I took the spoon. Gladys's words resonated. Be careful with what you drink. I am not hungry, I said. Silence. Marcus frowned. It is important. Brandon crossed his arms. Jason did not blink. I felt panic. It was just broth. I was becoming paranoid. I forced a smile. You are right. I drank. The taste was disgusting. When I finished, Marcus smiled in relief. Brandon and Jason nodded. They left. That night Marcus slept. I did not, my stomach churned. The baby moved forcefully. I remembered something. The first night of the broth. Marcus said, Will the heir be a strong child? And Brandon murmured something I now understood. He said, Yes, the heir at last. He did not say an heir. He said the heir, as if my child already had a destiny. I got up, went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, pale and afraid. It was not my imagination. Something was wrong. I went down to the kitchen. The bowl was in the sink. I approached. Inside there were herbs, dark stems, red berries that were almost black. They smelled sweet and nauseating. A noise on the porch. I peeked out. Under the moon I saw Brandon and Jason sitting on the garden bench. They were smoking, watching. Jason turned his head. His eyes looked toward the window, toward me. He could not see me, but he offered a slow smile. I stepped back. My heart was pounding. I went up to bed. Marcus wrapped his arm around me. His warmth now suffocated me. I had to find out the truth. Tomorrow I would not drink the broth. I had to talk to Gladys. The baby kicked nonstop as if the child knew the danger. The night was long, very long. I did not drink the broth the next day. I faked a bad headache. I just want to sleep, Marcus. I moaned, bringing my hands to my temples. Marcus looked worried. Genuinely worried. Do you want me to call the doctor? No, just rest. I got into bed, turning my back. I heard his footsteps going down the stairs, the murmurs in the hall, the deep voices of Brandon and Jason. And the broth? Asked one of them. I could not distinguish who. She will not take it today. She has a migraine, Marcus answered. His tone was strange, frustrated. Tomorrow then, the other voice said. She cannot skip many doses. It is crucial. My heart skipped a beat. Crucial. For what? Later Marcus came up. Go to sleep, honey. Brandon and Jason are worried. They say regularity is important. He kissed my forehead. His lips were dry. I waited for his breathing to become deep and regular. Then I slipped out of bed. The house creaked, every old piece of wood singing under my bare feet. I went down to the last step. A dim light came from the kitchen. And a sound. The soft tapping of a spoon against the bowl. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. I peeked my head out. It was not Marcus, it was Jason. With his back to me, in front of the stove, the ceramic bowl was steaming. Brandon was next to the kitchen table with a brown cloth bag. From it, he took handfuls of dried herbs. He examined them in the candlelight. More shadow root? Jason asked without turning. Yes, and the berries, the last ones left until the next moon, Brandon replied. His voice was a professional murmur. The dose must increase. Time is running short. I saw Brandon throw a handful of black stems and those wrinkled, dark berries into the bowl. A sour, sweet smell filled the air. The same as always. Do you think she suspects? Jason murmured, stirring the mixture. Brandon shrugged. Old Gladys spoke to her. I know. I saw her from the winery, but Sophia is docile. She trusts Marcus. That will keep her calm until it is too late. A block of ice formed in my chest. Too late. The doctor from Napa, Jason began. He is paid off, Brandon interrupted. He will report what we need. We just have to make sure the samples are correct. I could not breathe. I took a step back. The floor creaked. Both brothers turned in unison like animals sensing a noise. I crouched down, hiding in the darkness of the hallway. They did not see me. I heard Brandon curse softly. It must be a cat. Let us finish. Marcus must not know we are preparing an extra batch. Minutes later they turned off the light and left through the back door. I waited a century before moving. I entered the kitchen. The smell was nauseating. On the table where the bag had been, there were a few fragments of a pointy dry leaf. I kept it in the pocket of my robe. The next day I had an appointment with the gynecologist in Napa Dar. Samuel Reed, an older man recommended by the Reynolds family. In the car Marcus was kind. Do you see how I take care of you? The best doctor for my child. He smiled, but his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. In the office, Dr. Reed did my ultrasound. His face behind the screen was expressionless. The fetus is growing well. The child moves a lot, I said. Too much sometimes, as if the child were agitated. The doctor looked at me over his glasses. It is normal. Vitality. It could be because of something I ingest, I insisted, looking at Marcus out of the corner of my eye. He had a fixed smile. Dear. Reed lowered the ultrasound. Mrs. Reynolds, do you take any supplements, any infusions, anything other than what is prescribed? Marcus intervened, his voice soft but firm. Only the vitamins, doctor. And a family broth full of good herbs. My grandmother's tradition to strengthen pregnant women. The doctor nodded almost too quickly. Ah yes, old customs. Good. He wrote something down. The levels are active, but within what is expected. His gaze avoided mine. Levels of what? I asked. Of everything, ma'am. Do not worry. He stood up. Next appointment in a month. As we left, a young nurse with a fresh face caught up to me in the hallway. Marcus was paying at reception. Mrs. Reynolds, she said in a low, rapid voice. The blood tests. The alkaloid levels are high, very high. The doctor noted it down, but he looked toward the office nervously. You must be careful with what you take. Some herbs can be stimulants, dangerous. Stimulants like what? Like to excite the nervous system. Of the fetus, too. She saw Marcus approaching. Take care of yourself, she whispered and walked away. On the way home, the silence was thick. What did that nurse tell you? Marcus asked. Nothing, just saying goodbye. He said no more, but that night the bowl arrived earlier. Drink, Sophia, to regain your strength, Marcus said. His smile did not reach his eyes. I looked at the bowl. It was my prison, my poison, and my child's. Of course, I said, smiling. Thank you, my love. I waited for him to go to the winery under the pretext of an urgent call. I took the bowl. I did not go to the sink. I went to the small downstairs bathroom, lifted the toilet lid, and poured the thick, yellowish broth. The herbs swirled before disappearing. I filled the bowl with tap water, swirled it around, and flushed that water too. A sticky residue of grease remained on the porcelain. I wiped it with paper. I left the bowl in the sink as if I had washed it. The relief was instantaneous and terrifying. Now I was acting against them. I waited for the reaction. Marcus returned. He saw the clean bowl. He looked at me. Did it sit well with you? Yes, much better, I said, locking my eyes on his, perhaps unintentionally challenging him. He held my gaze a second too long, then nodded. I am glad. But that night his arms around me were not an embrace. They were an inspection. The next day the same thing. I poured the broth, and the next I pretended to drink it. Then I would run to the bathroom. I began to feel better. The baby remained active, but the movements were less frantic, more normal. For days later Jason came alone. He brought the bowl. His gaze was a dagger. Marcus asked me to bring it to you. He is busy in the winery. Thank you, Jason, I said, taking the bowl. He did not leave. He stayed at the door watching. Marcus says you look better, that the broth is working for you. Yes, I smiled. I feel much stronger. How strange, he said, his voice like a dragged stone. Because the broth from the last few days has returned almost intact. The herbs settled at the bottom untouched. His dark eyes did not blink, almost as if someone had thrown it. The air escaped my lungs. I do not know what you mean, I managed to stammer. Of course not, he said. He turned around. Enjoy the broth, sister-in-law. And he left. I was left trembling with the hot bowl in my hands. It was not a suspicion. They knew. That night I could not fake it. I had to take a real sip, the first in days. The taste made me gag. Marcus watched me from the door with an expression I could not decipher. Sadness, resignation. As I clung to the sink, I knew the game was over. I could no longer throw the broth away. I had to find out what those herbs were. And for that, I needed to get out of this house. I needed help. The next day, while Marcus was out, I put on a loose coat. I went out the back door straight to the hedge that separated our property from Gladys's old cottage. I knocked on her door, my heart hammering. She did not answer. I pushed. The door gave way, creaking. The interior smelled of dust and dried plants. It was dark. Mrs. Ellis, I called softly. A noise came from the back. I saw her sitting in a rocking chair by the window. She looked at me as if she had been waiting for me. You stopped drinking the broth, she said. It was not a question. Yes. What are those herbs they are making for me? Gladys closed her eyes for a moment. They make you part of the ritual. They prepare the child and you. For what? Her voice trembled. So that when the full moon arrives, she opened her eyes. And they were wells of ancient pain. The life of the first child is the right one, pure and potent to break their curse. What curse? Theirs. The Reynolds. She leaned toward me. 100 years ago, the first Reynolds made a deal. His vineyard was dying. He offered something in return, something that was not his to give. the life of the first child of each generation, so the earth would drink and yield wine. I felt the ground open up. My child is not your child to them. The child is the payment, the offering. Tears furrowed her wrinkles. I lost my boy to the broth, to the full moon, and my husband, a minor Reynolds, could not stop him. He died trying. I collapsed into an old chair. I could not cry. The horror was too great. What should I do? I whispered. Flee, she said forcefully, before the next full moon. You have, she calculated, less than 14 days. But Marcus, he loves me. Gladys looked at me with infinite pity. Do you think he did not love his mother? She also drank the broth. She also gave up the first child. You're Marcus. The world faded. Marcus. He was the first child. He survived. In exchange for what? Flee, Sophia, Gladys insisted. Go to the city, report them. I will help you. I have proof, things I hid. I nodded, dazed. Thank you. I left her house like a ghost. Less than 14 days. I had a plan. I would fake a miscarriage. That was the only way out. I would have to be convincing. When I returned home, Marcus was already there, sitting at the kitchen table. In front of him on the table was last night's empty bowl, and next to it a small piece of paper towel stained with yellowish grease. He looked at me. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot. Sophia, he said, his voice hoarse from something that sounded like true pain. Where have you been? Walking. I needed air. He stood up and pointed to the bowl. The doctor's nurse, the young one, called today. She said she warned you. About the herbs. He paused. And the analysis of the bathroom cleaning shows traces of the berries. Of the moonberries. I said nothing. Fear paralyzed me. Why, Sophia? He asked, and his voice broke. Why do you throw away the broth we give you for your own good? I looked into his eyes. In them I saw love, but I also saw the weight of a century-old secret, and I saw determination. Because I know what it is, I managed to say. Gladys told me everything. The name fell between us like a bomb. Marcus's face transformed. The pain vanished. What remained was something hard, something cold, something I did not know. So you know, he said, his voice now flat, empty. You cannot flee, Sophia. No one has succeeded. Our child's destiny is written in the earth, in the blood, in our family. He took a step toward me. I backed away. The full moon is in 12 nights, he said. Until then, honey, you are going to drink your broth, every drop. This time I will make sure of it. He called toward the door. Brandon, Jason. Pure, blinding panic exploded inside me. I screamed. I turned to run, but Marcus's hands caught me, strong as iron. The door opened. The two brothers entered. Their faces were stone masks. Her room, Marcus ordered, his voice muffled against my hair. And bring the bowl, the child has to drink, the child has to be ready. It was the end of chapter 2, the end of my freedom. The moon somewhere in the sky was beginning its countdown. They locked me in my room. Our room. The key turned twice from the outside. The heavy footsteps of Brandon and Jason echoed down the stairs. They left me alone with the echo of my own panic. I screamed. I pounded on the solid wood door until my fists hurt. No one answered. The house, old and solid, absorbed my sounds. I slid down the door to the floor, hugging my legs. 12 nights until the full moon. At dusk, the key turned again. It was Marcus. He entered alone, bringing a tray with a simple plate of food and, of course, a steaming bowl of that broth. Its smell made me recoil instinctively. Sophia, he said with a tired voice. There was no trace of the cold fury from before, only a deep, freezing resignation. He put the tray on the nightstand. You have to eat and you have to drink this. No, I whispered, pressing myself against the headboard of the bed. I will not do it. You will harm our child. His face twitched as if I had hit him. I am not harming the child, he said, each word heavy as a slab. I am consecrating the child to save many more. To save this family, its lands, its legacy. The child is ours, not part of any ritual. I screamed. The child is the heir, he roared, slamming his fist on the dresser. The candle jumped. Then he lowered his voice, suffocated. It is the price, Sophia. The price we all pay. My mother paid it for me, her mother for my father. Now it is our turn. Your mother, Gladys. She said. Gladys is not my mother. He cut in with a flash of anger. My mother accepted her duty and lived knowing she had fulfilled the pact. Gladys was the wife of a great uncle, an intruder, a madwoman who tried to break tradition and almost doomed us all. He rubbed his face. Drink the broth, Sophia. The herbs will not harm the child. They only prepare the child's essence. They purify the blood so that when the time comes, the ritual will be clean and the pact renewed for another generation. Never, I spat. He sighed long and deep. Then I am sorry. He approached. I shrank back, but he did not touch me. Instead, he took from his jacket pocket a small glass vial with a clear liquid. I did not want to do this, but we have no choice left. Time is short. What is that? Something that will help you rest, he said, and his tone was heavy with a genuine sadness that chilled me even more. And accept. Before I could react, scream, or fight, he knocked on the door. Brandon and Jason entered. Their faces were impassive. Jason grabbed me by the arms from behind with strength. Brandon pinned my legs. Marcus, with tears shining in his eyes, approached with the vial. No, Marcus, please, I begged, fighting uselessly. I am sorry, my love, for our future, he whispered and pinched my nose. When I opened my mouth to breathe, he poured the liquid. It was bitter, burning my throat. I swallowed involuntarily. The effect was fast. A warm heaviness spread through my limbs. My vision blurred. The figures of the three brothers blurred, melting into shadows. The last thing I felt was Marcus gently laying me down on the bed, tucking me in. The last thing I heard were his distant, distorted words. Bring the book. She has to understand. She has to see the truth. The sleep was black and dreamless. I woke up with a pasty mouth and my head like cotton. The room was dark. A single moonbeam entered through the window, illuminating the empty bowl on the nightstand. They had made me drink the broth while I was unconscious. A wave of nausea and despair washed over me. I tried to get up, my legs gave way. I stumbled to the door. It was still locked. The window overlooked a cobbled inner courtyard 2 stories down with no escape. Then my gaze fell on the dresser. On it, where before there was only a vase, there was now a book. A huge book, bound in dark, worn leather with rusty metal fittings. It was not there before. Bring the book. With a terrible premonition, I crawled to it. I opened it. The pages were thick parchment, the writing in old, elaborate calligraphy in English. There were drawings. Drawings that, in the moonlight, made the blood freeze in my veins. Illustrations of vineyards with fat, black grapes and of a man dressed in the style of centuries ago, on his knees before a shadowy, twisted figure. The title of the page read Pact of the Eternal Harvest. Year of our Lord 1826. I turned the pages with trembling fingers, lists of names, dates. Elias Reynolds. Offering. The firstborn child born of his wife Evelyn. The harvest of 1827, the most abundant in 100 years. Raymond Reynolds. Offering. The firstborn child born of his wife Catherine. The phylloxera plague bypassed our vines, and more. Generation after generation. Always the first child, always a date close to the full moon in March. My due date. I found the page for my husband's generation. Marcus Reynolds' father. Offering. The firstborn child born of his wife Vivian. The drought ended. The wine heir's blood reached its peak. There was a note in the margin in a more modern handwriting, my Marcus's. I survived. The offering was accepted. The pact confirmed. My debt settled with the life of my first child. A gasp choked in my throat. It was not a legend, it was not the madness of an old woman. It was there, written in now darkened ink. The proof. My child was on that list, still unnamed, but with a date already assigned, the full moon of this month. I heard a noise, a soft scratching on the window. I turned startled. It was nothing, just the branch of a vine. I approached. The window was not completely closed. From the courtyard below, someone had thrown a small stone wrapped in paper, hooking it on the window grate. With trembling hands I untangled it. It was a crumpled note, a shaky handwriting written in pencil. The old winery. The key is in the stone with the cross-shaped crack. Look for the names. Today at 3. And Gladys, it had to be her. At 3 in the morning the house would be silent. The wait was torture. Every minute was an eternity. At 2:30 I heard Marcus's snoring next to me. He slept deeply. The sedative must have affected him too, or perhaps the weight of his guilt. I slipped out of bed. Wrapped in darkness I tried the door. To my surprise it gave way. They had not locked it again. Carelessness or perhaps excessive confidence in the sedative. The hallway was dark and silent. I went down the stairs avoiding the steps I knew. The house was a mausoleum. I went out the back kitchen door to the patio. The night air was freezing. I ran barefoot along the stone path leading to the winery buildings. The old winery was a low, moss-covered stone building set apart from the main complex. Its oak door was locked with a thick padlock. I remembered the message. The stone with the cross-shaped crack. I felt along the wall. There, in the lower right corner, a stone with a fracture that formed a rough cross. Pressed it. Nothing happened. I pushed it to the side. With a thud it gave way slightly. I put my fingers in and pulled. It was a fake stone, a hidden hollow. Inside, cold and metallic, was an old key. The key turned in the lock with a squeak that seemed deafening to me. I pushed the heavy door. The smell of dampness, earth, and stale wine hit me. I used the small flashlight from the keychain I had grabbed on my way out. The beam of light revealed a space full of dusty barrels and cobwebs. And then I saw it. On the back wall there were no barrels, there was a kind of stone altar, and on top an even larger book than the one in my room, open. I approached. It was not a book, it was a ledger, a large parchment spread under glass, and on it not just names. There were small locks of hair tied with thread next to each entry and tiny vials with yellowish labels. Bringing the light closer, I read Elias 1827, Raymond 1851, Vivian 1955. They were the names of the offerings, the children. My vision blurred. I looked for the current date. There was already a blank line prepared. Sophia 2026. And next to it an empty space for the lock of hair and for the vial. A noise behind me. I turned around terrified. It was Gladys wrapped in a black shawl, looking like just another shadow. You had to see it, she whispered. You had to know I am not lying. It is horrible, I babbled, pointing to the vials. What is inside? Do not ask, she said with eyes full of tears. The pact is clear. The life of the first child taken under the full moon of the season of the vine's awakening. Its essence mixed with the first harvest is the winery star wine, the one they call heir's blood, the one that gives fame and fortune to the Reynolds and to Marcus. He survived. His name is on the list. Gladys nodded bitterly. His mother, Vivian, was one of us, a wife brought in from the outside, but she was weak. She accepted. She raised Marcus with the guilt and obligation pinned to her heart. They prepared him for this to perpetuate the cycle. He believes it is an honor, a sacred duty. He does not see the curse, he only sees the salvation of his vines. We must destroy this, I said in a burst of rage, grabbing the ledger. We must end it all. Gladys's cold hand closed over my wrist. It is not your proof. If you flee, you will need this. You need the big book, the one with the names, and you need a vial. Following her gaze, I saw a separate shelf with empty, clean glass vials waiting for the next harvest. Mine. Take it, Gladys said. And the book from your room. Hide them. When you flee, take them to the police, to the newspapers. And you. Come with me. She shook her head sadly. I am the living reminder. Their punishment for my husband's failed attempt. If I leave, they will find me. And you too. I will cover your escape. I have a plan, but you must do it soon. Tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Marcus and his brothers have a business dinner in Napa. They will be out for several hours. It is your chance. What should I do? You will fake a miscarriage, she said with a firm voice. I have herbs that will induce cramps. Bleeding. It will look real. When you scream, I will come. I will tell them they need to take you to the doctor. On the way, I will help you escape. She said it with such certainty that for a moment dangerous, burning hope sprouted in my chest. And the baby, the herbs will harm it. No, she said, and her gaze was firm. They are mild. They will simulate. But we must be quick. Now go back. They must not suspect. She handed me a small cloth packet with dried herbs inside. Infusion. Drink it tomorrow afternoon. It will work fast. She also gave me an old mobile phone of mine. It is charged. It has my niece's number in San Francisco saved. She will help you. Call her when you are far away. I put the packet and the phone away as if they were gold. I took one of the empty vials and hid it under my nightgown. Then I grabbed the huge book from the room, the one with the names. It was heavy as a sin. Thank you, Gladys, I whispered, my eyes clouded with tears. She touched my cheek, a maternal gesture that broke my soul. Save your child, Sophia. Break the curse. I returned to the house like a ghost. I hid the vial and the book under some loose floorboards in the closet in a dark corner. I got into bed next to Marcus, who was still snoring. I trembled until exhaustion overcame me. The morning arrived gray. Marcus woke up. He looked at me with red eyes. Did you sleep well? He asked. His voice was hoarse. Yes, I lied, looking away. Today I have to go to Napa with my brothers. An important dinner. We will be back late. His hand sought mine. I pulled away. Sophia, please try to understand. I do not want to talk to you, I said with all the coldness I could muster. He sighed, got up and dressed. Before leaving, he stopped at the door. Brandon will come to bring you food and the broth. Please take it. It is for the best. I did not answer. I heard the key turn in the lock again, but this time I did not feel trapped. I felt ready to jump. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Brandon came at noon, brought the tray and the broth. He watched me with his hawk eyes while I slowly brought the spoon to my mouth. I swallowed the disgusting broth under his gaze. He nodded in satisfaction and left. As soon as I heard his footsteps fade away, I ran to the bathroom and threw up as much as I could. Then I prepared Gladys's infusion. It smelled of chamomile and something more earthy. I drank it in one gulp. The effects were immediate. Half an hour later, a sharp pain twisted my belly like a knife. A warm wetness ran down my legs. I looked down. The red stain on my robe expanded rapidly. I did not have to fake the scream. It was heart-wrenching and came from the depths of my terror. Help someone. Help. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. It was not Brandon, it was Jason. He threw the door open. His eyes widened at the sight of the blood on the sheets on the floor on me. And he yelled, Brandon! Brandon, come here! Brandon appeared behind him. His face paled. Go get Marcus now. Tell him what has happened. No! I screamed with real tears of pain and panic running down my face. I need a doctor, please. Shut up, Brandon snapped, approaching. His gaze was not of concern, but of calculation, of anger. What have you done? At that moment, Gladys's firm, elderly voice sounded from the door. Make way, fools. Can't you see she is in distress? We have to take her to the hospital in Napa now. Brandon and Jason looked at each other hesitantly. Gladys's plan was working. They were supposed to leave, she was going to take over, but something in their eyes told me the distrust was too great. You stay with her, Brandon ordered Jason. I will go get Marcus. We will take her. Then he looked at Gladys with contempt. You go home. This is none of your business. Gladys tried to protest, but Brandon pushed her out of the room roughly. I heard her weak complaints fade down the hallway. Jason stayed at the door blocking it, his arms crossed. He watched me with a grimace of disgust. Look what you have done, he muttered. All ruined by your weakness. The pain from the herbs was real, but the pain in my heart seeing the plan crumble was greater. Jason was not going to move, and Marcus and Brandon would return soon. The hope vanished as fast as the red stain spreading at my feet. Time once again was running out. The wait was a torment of cold sweat and sharp pain. Jason did not move from the door. His eyes, like two pools of oil, did not leave me for a second. The red stain on the sheet dried, forming a dark, accusing crust. Gladys's herbs had done their job too well. The cramps were real sharp, but terror drowned everything out. I heard the car brake sharply in the courtyard below. Slamming doors, muffled, urgent voices coming up the stairs. Then Marcus burst into the room. His face was distorted, pale with anger and something else, fear. He rushed toward the bed, but stopped a meter away looking at the blood, then looking at me. "What have you done?" he asked. His voice was not a scream, it was a dull guttural roar. "What any mother would do," I managed to say, my voice hoarse from screaming. "Protect her child from a dangerous situation." Brandon appeared beside him. His gaze was glacial, analytical. He observed the scene, my trembling, the dried blood. Then, without a word, he approached and grabbed my wrist tightly, checking for a pulse. Then, with a sudden gesture, he pressed my belly with his flat, hard hand. I screamed, writhing. "The bleeding is superficial. The cramps are strong, but the uterus is not contracting like in a real miscarriage," he declared like a veterinarian examining cattle. He dropped my wrist with disdain. "It is a sham, a clumsy sham." Marcus blinked as if coming out of a trance. The confusion on his face cleared, giving way to a disappointment so deep it almost looked like pain. "A sham, Sophia. All of this." He made a vague gesture toward the bed. "Gladys," Jason spat from the door. "The old woman gave her something. I smelled it from a distance when I came. Emmenagogue herbs. Weak, but enough for this." "And the child?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a thread. "The child is fine," Brandon said with disdain. "The child moves. Feel it. The child is strong. Too strong for this nonsense." The relief I should have felt drowned in a sea of panic. My plan, my poor, desperate plan, was torn to shreds. They had seen through it in seconds. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was no longer any trace of love, nor pain, not even disappointment. There was only a cold determination polished like steel. It was the look of the businessman saving his empire, the look of the one fulfilling his right. "You spoke with Gladys, you tried to deceive us. You tried to take my child away." Each statement was a hammer blow. "I can no longer trust you, Sophia. I can no longer take the risk." He turned to his brothers. "The attic. Now." "No," I shrieked, backing against the headboard. "Marcus, please, the child is ours." "Your child is the heir," he corrected with a terrifying calm. "And the child's destiny is greater than your motherly concerns." He looked at Jason. "Hold her." Jason lunged at me. His hands, large and rough, pinned me while I kicked and struggled. Brandon took a handkerchief and a small bottle from his pocket. He soaked the handkerchief and pressed it against my nose and mouth. The sweet, acrid smell filled my lungs. The world spun, blurred, went dark. I woke up with a pounding headache and the taste of bile in my mouth. I was lying on a rough, dusty wooden floor. It was cold, a damp cold that pierced the bones. A trickle of light filtered through a small skylight in the sloping roof, revealing dust motes dancing in the air. I sat up slowly, nauseous. It was the attic. A long, low space, cluttered with old furniture covered with white sheets that looked like ghosts in the gloom. It smelled of dust, old wood, and dampness. At the end, a small solid wood door with a peephole at eye level. The only way out. I crawled to it, pushed it. Did not even move. I pounded on it. "Let me out, Marcus, please." Only the echo of my own screams answered me, muffled by the dust and isolation. I collapsed against the door, crying with rage and helplessness. Then something crunched under my hand. I brushed aside a pile of cobwebs. On the floor next to the doorframe there was a loose strip of wood. Pulled it. Underneath, in a hollow, was a small cold object, an old rusty key. A frantic heartbeat pounded in my chest. I grabbed it with trembling fingers. It did not fit the modern lock on the door. I looked around. On the opposite wall, almost hidden by a huge wardrobe, was a tiny service door, no more than 3 feet high. The key, rusty and old, turned in the lock of that little door with a sinister squeak. Pushed it. It was not an exit. It was an access hole to a narrow, dark ventilation shaft that descended vertically, a black well. A faint smell of earth and stale wine rose through it. It must lead somewhere in the winery or between the walls. It was too narrow for me, even in my condition. But maybe. A noise at the main door made me jump. The peephole darkened. I heard someone's breathing on the other side. "Sophia." It was Marcus's flat, emotionless voice coming through the wood. "Are you awake? Let me go, Marcus. This is wrong." I yelled, pressing my mouth to the wood. What is wrong is that you jeopardize centuries of tradition, of sacrifice for sentimentality, he replied. The ritual is tomorrow night with the full moon. What ritual? Endangering our own child. You have crossed a line. There was a sigh on the other side. You would not understand. It is necessary. How was it necessary for me? My blood strengthened the earth. My life was built on that offering. My child will do the same. The child's part in the ritual will guarantee other decades of prosperity. It is a cycle, Sophia, sacred. It is wrong, not redemption, I yelled. And for the first time his cold composure broke. I heard the thud of his fist against the door. You should feel honored. Your child will be part of something eternal. The child's essence will live in every bottle, in every harvest. I prefer the child to live in my arms, not in a bottle of cursed wine, I spat. A heavy silence. Then his voice, controlled again, icy. Tomorrow Brandon will come up to prepare you. He will dress you in the appropriate clothes. He will purify you. And when the moon is at its highest point, we will come for you. Accept your destiny, Sophia. It will make everything easier. Never. Then I am sorry for you. His footsteps faded away. Panic strangled me. Tomorrow I only had until tomorrow night. I looked at the small door of the ventilation shaft. Maybe I could climb down, but what if I got stuck? And the baby? In my desperation I started searching the attic. Maybe there was something, some tool, something. I overturned dusty boxes full of old tableware, account books, moth-eaten clothes. Nothing useful. Until, moving a heavy trunk, I found something that stopped my heart. It was not a tool. It was a small diary covered in faded fabric. I opened it. The handwriting, fine and elegant, belonged to a woman. The date on the first page, March 1965. Dear Diary, today they locked me in the attic. They say it is for my own good, for the good of the heir. Marcus, my Marcus, not his father. God, the names repeat like a curse. He says I must accept it, that it is an honor. But I feel my child kick, and I only know the child is mine, not theirs. I found a key. I do not know where it leads. I will pray that to somewhere far from here. Vivian, my husband's mother. She too. She was here too. Tears clouded my vision. I turned the pages. Entries full of terror, of failed attempts to reason with her husband, of hidden letters she never sent. Until the last entry, dated one day before the full moon in April 1965. Tomorrow is the night. Marcus, the father, has come up. He told me to dress in white. What is the color of purity for the ritual? I spat in his face. Brandon and Jason, his brothers, the same names, my God, the same, held me down. I found where the key leads. It is just a shaft to the old winery. There is no way out, but there is something else. On the floor, under the loose board by the big trunk. There are more stories. I am not alone, I never have been. May God forgive me for what I am going to do. I will not let them touch my child, Vivian. The diary fell from my hands. With my heart galloping, I knelt next to the big trunk I had moved. With my nails I scratched the dusty floor. There, a wider board with a knot in the wood. Pressed it. It lifted with a creak. Underneath there was no earth, there was a hollow, and inside not one but several diaries. 5. 6. I grabbed them all with trembling hands. I opened them at random. Different handwriting. Different dates. 1921, 1898, 1875. Different names. Louise, Margaret, Caroline, all wives of the Reynolds, all mothers of the heir, all locked in this attic, all writing their terror, their disbelief, their despair. The one from 1875, Caroline, had hidden a sharp piece of glass. In her last entry, written in shaky handwriting and dark stains, she said, I prefer to take the child with me. May they never have the child's essence. May their cursed wine sour forever. She had not succeeded. Her diary was here. Her story forgotten like all the others. Not all. Vivian, my Marcus's mother, had written the last entry, but there was no diary from 1995 from the wife of the previous generation. Perhaps she had accepted her fate, or perhaps she had not had time to write it down. I searched through Vivian's pages. On the last leaf, stuck with a remnant of wax, I found something. A small modern key and a crumpled piece of paper with a rough map drawn in pencil. It showed the attic, the ventilation shaft, and a secret passageway behind the chimney in the old winery that led to the vineyards. Underneath in hasty handwriting, "For my son if he ever wakes up. For the next one if she has more courage than me. V." Vivian had not given up. She had found a way out. But why did she not use it? The diary did not say. Maybe she was caught. Maybe in the end fear or manipulation won out. But I was not Vivian, nor Caroline, nor Louise. I had her map and I had her key. I looked at it. It was not the key to the attic door. It was smaller. What could it be for? A metallic noise at the door startled me. The peephole went dark again. It was not Marcus, it was Jason's harsh voice. "Dinner, you." A slit at the bottom of the door opened. A metal plate with a piece of stale bread and a glass of water was shoved inside. "Enjoy, tomorrow you have a feast." His low, cruel laugh echoed before the peephole closed. I looked at the plate, then the key in my hand, then the map. The exit was in the old winery, which could only be accessed through the shaft or the main door, which would be guarded. I had a key that I did not know what it was for. I had a map of an impossible route. I had the history of half a dozen women who had faced the same situation within these very four walls, and I had a baby kicking in my womb, oblivious to the time slipping away from the child. The light from the skylight dimmed. Night was falling. The last night before the full moon, before the ritual. I curled up in a corner, hugging the other women's diaries as if their hopelessness could give me strength. I could not fail. Not just for me, for Vivian, for Caroline, for all those who wrote their last words here, and for the next one who would never have to write in this cursed attic. I squeezed the small, cold key until it left a groove in my palm. The pain was sharp, real. A reminder. Tomorrow, I thought, looking at the small door of the ventilation shaft, pitch black. Tomorrow I either get out of here or I die trying. The night in the attic was endless. The cold seeped through the cracks, an ancient stone cold that pierced to the bone. I did not sleep. I could not. Every shadow, every creak of the old wood was an omen of horror. I clutched Vivian's key in a fist until the metal seemed to meld with my skin. The map rested on my lap under the faint grayish light of dawn beginning to filter through the skylight. First I tried the key in the lock of the small shaft door. It did not fit. It was for something else. I searched the attic, feeling every box, every old piece of furniture, looking for a hidden lock. Nothing. Despair began to climb up my throat like a poisonous vine. Then I remembered the hairpin. My long dark hair. I always wore a simple metal hairpin. I took it out. It was thin, flexible. With trembling hands, I knelt before the large attic door, in front of the sturdy modern lock. I inserted the pin, trying to feel the pins like I had seen in movies. I only managed to bend the thin metal and make a useless scratching noise. I cursed under my breath. I was not a thief. I was a terrified pregnant woman locked in a garret. Frustrated, I returned to the shaft. Maybe even if it was narrow. I leaned into the opening. The darkness was absolute. Cold, stale air rose from the depths. I stuck an arm in, then my shoulder. It was impossible. My firm, round belly hit the edge of the opening. I did not fit. A sob escaped my lips. That shaft was not an exit for me. It was a vertical tomb. In that moment of total despair, a sound. A soft metallic tapping coming from inside the shaft. I froze, holding my breath. The tapping repeated, more insistently. Then a muffled voice, distorted by the echo of the pipe, but recognizable. "Sophia, Sophia, are you there?" It was Gladys. A flood of relief mixed with terror washed over me. "Gladys, I am here," I whispered loudly, pressing my mouth to the opening. "Reach your hand down the shaft. Hurry, do not hesitate." I lay on the cold floor and reached my arm as far down the black hole as I could. My fingers groped blindly, touched something cold and rectangular tied with a string. I grabbed it and pulled it out. It was an old mobile phone, one of those thick ones with an antenna, the one she had given me before and that Jason had taken away. She must have had another. "Gladys, how?" "There is a network of old ventilation shafts. Some reach my house. This is the only one that connects to the attic," her rushed voice explained. "I do not have much time. They are watching my house. You have to call the sheriff's department at 911 now." But what if they do not believe me? You have to do it. Describe the diaries, the vials in the old winery. Tell them it is a serious situation and attempted harm to the child. Hurry, Sophia. The voice cut off. I heard a faint shuffling noise, then silence. She was gone. My hand shook so much I almost dropped the phone. I turned it on. The green screen lit up my tearful face. It had battery. I dialed 911 with a freezing finger. It rang twice. Then a masculine, professional, impersonal voice. Napa County Sheriff's Department, go ahead. Help, I cried. My voice broken by sobs. They are holding me in the Reynolds house in the town in the attic. They are going to harm my baby. It is a ritual. There is a pact. Ma'am, calm down, the voice said, now with a hint of condescension. Can you give me your name? Sophia. Sophia Reynolds. My husband is Marcus Reynolds. His brothers Brandon and Jason locked me up last night. They have a book, some vials in the old winery. They have done this before. There are diaries in the attic from other women. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence that was too long. Then the voice returned, lower, more personal. Mrs. Reynolds. Sophia, right? Listen. I am Detective Frank Harlan. I am the cousin of Marcus's late mother. Vivian was my aunt. The world stopped. The air thickened, impossible to breathe. What you are describing, the voice continued, now with a tone of tired warning, are town legends. Old wives' tales. The Reynolds are a respected family. Look, I know pregnancy can cause stress. Weird ideas. They are not ideas. I am locked up. I have the proof right here. I screamed into the phone, desperation tearing my voice. Proof of old stories, he said firmly. Sophia, listen to me. Get out of that attic. Go down and talk to your husband. He loves you. Do not ruin your life with crazy accusations. Family comes first. Always. You are with them, I accused, feeling the last thread of hope snap with a dry crack. I am with the law, and the law here knows how to distinguish between marital problems and crimes. What you are telling makes no sense. Now I suggest you hang up and talk to Marcus. Good day. The click of the line cutting off sounded like a cell door slamming. I dropped against the wall, the useless phone slipping from my hand. I could not breathe. The detective the authority was a relative was in on the secret, or at least tolerated it, covered it up. The word of a distressed woman against the prosperous and respected Reynolds. I had no chance. A faint rhythmic noise made me lift my head. Tap tap scrape. It came from near one of the diaries I had dropped on the floor. The morning wind, blowing through some crack, was moving the pages of one of them, the oldest one, Caroline's from 1875. The page kept opening over and over as if calling me. I crawled over to it. Picked it up. The page the wind insisted on turning to was one of the last ones. It was not a diary entry. It was a rough drawing done with faded ink. It showed the attic, and in a corner where I had been sitting there was a mark on the floor, an X, and some words written in an anguished hand. Here lies my hope and my doom. The stone that sees all and stops nothing. I looked at the corner. There was only dust and bare floorboards. I moved closer, wiping away the dust with my hands. The floorboards were exactly like the rest. Pressed, I knocked nothing. Then my fingers found an almost imperceptible edge. One board was not nailed down, just wedged in. I lifted it. Underneath there was no earth or hollow. There was a stone, a flat, gray slab embedded in what must be the load-bearing wall of the house. And in the center of the stone, roughly but unmistakably carved, the same symbol I had seen in the book of the pact. A vine winding around a crescent moon, and beneath it a drop, the drop of essence, the Reynolds family symbol. And around the stone scratches, marks like those on a prison wall. They were dates, names. Louise 1842, Margaret 1898, Caroline 1875, Vivian 1965, and a blank space, recently scraped, ready. For Sophia 2026. It was not just an attic, it was a secret altar, a chapel for their curse. This stone was the nexus, the point where, according to their twisted belief, the ritual connected with the earth. Horror flooded me, but also a cold, new fury. I no longer cried. I picked up Caroline's diary. Reading past the drawing, I found the final entry, the one I had not read. They believe the strength is in the child's essence, but I have read in the big book, the one the grandfather hides in the study behind the portrait of the first Reynolds. There it tells the whole truth. The strength is not just in the essence. It is in the mother's consent, in her absolute despair, in her final curse. That is the true essence they desire. That is why they lock us up, that is why they break us. Not to purify us, to poison us with hate and pain, so that our dying curse will be the perfect seasoning for their foul wine. My child will not be born. I will take the child with me, and my curse will be that this house collapses on their heads. May life never grow in this earth again. Caroline had not failed. She had chosen, she had stolen the final ingredient, her consent, her curse, and she had faced the end cursing them. But the house was still standing, the vines flourished. Her curse failed. Or maybe they had just contained it here in this stone. I heard footsteps below, voices. Marcus and Brandon coming up. Are the clothes ready? Marcus asked, his voice tense. Yes. White linen. As tradition dictates. Jason is preparing the tools in the winery. Everything will be ready for the moon. The panic returned, sharp and cutting. I looked at Vivian's key. I looked at the carved stone. I looked at the map. The map showed an exit through the old winery, but the old winery would be full of people preparing the ritual. Then I understood. Vivian had not used the map because the exit was blocked by the others, but she had left the key, a key that did not open any door up here, unless it did not open a door but locked something or triggered something. The footsteps approached the other side of the attic door. The bolt began to slide. I had no time. I grabbed all the diaries and hid them under a dirty sheet along with the phone. I stood up facing the door, Vivian's key hidden in my closed fist, its sharp metal biting into my skin. The door opened. Marcus and Brandon entered. Brandon carried a white, simple, antique dress that fluttered like a ghost in his arms. Marcus wore the face of a statue. His eyes sought me out. "It is time to prepare you, Sophia," Marcus said. His voice was hollow, as if speaking in a dream. "I will not put that on," I said with a calm that even I did not recognize. Brandon smiled, a humorless gesture. "It is not a question." He advanced toward me. At that moment the baby kicked hard, a kick of protest that doubled me over at the waist. It was a sharp, real pain, and it was the distraction I needed. Marcus instinctively took a step toward me, a spark of genuine concern in his eyes. "Marcus," I moaned, faking a greater pain, letting myself fall toward him. He held out his arms to catch me. In that moment, with my free hand, the one without the key, I grabbed the old rusty metal candelabra that was in a nearby box. With all my strength I struck him with it to defend myself. The sound was dull. Brandon grunted, stumbling, bringing his hands to his temple. The white dress fell to the dust. "Sophia!" Marcus roared, but I had already broken free from his grasp. I ran, not toward the door, Brandon, though injured, was blocking it, but toward the corner with the carved stone. "You cannot escape," Marcus shouted, chasing me. I reached the stone. I did not have a plan, just an instinct. Vivian's key in my hand, the stone with its symbol, the 10th mark in the diary. In an act of pure desperation, I raised the key and jammed it, not into a lock, but into the center of the carved drop of essence, into a tiny, almost invisible hole I had noticed. The key fit perfectly and turned with a sound of ancient oiled machinery that I had not heard in the whole house. No secret door opened, but somewhere far below us, in the depths of the house or the winery, there was a dull crack, a rumbling of shifting stones, followed by a distant scream of surprise and alarm. It was Jason's voice. Marcus stopped dead, his face riddled with disbelief. "What have you done?" Brandon, injured, looked around in confusion. That noise came from the winery. I did not know. But Vivian's key had done something. It had triggered some ancient mechanism, some trap or secret that she had discovered and had saved for this moment. "It seems Vivian left you a gift, Marcus," I said, panting, yanking the key from the stone. "Perhaps she was not as okay with the honor as you think." The fury that distorted Marcus's face then was overwhelming. "Take her," he ordered Brandon in a voice that resonated with pure hate. "To the winery. Now. Let her see what her rebellion has caused. The moon does not wait, and now her suffering will be part of the ritual." She will be remembered not as the mother of the heir, but as the one who tried to take the child and failed. Brandon, staggering, lunged at me. This time there was no candelabra to stop him. His hands, strong, grabbed me like shackles. Marcus picked up the white dress from the floor and threw it over my shoulders like a shroud. As they dragged me out of the attic, down the stairs that led not to the bedrooms, but to the underground wineries, I looked back. The other women's diaries were left behind, hidden under the dirty sheet. Their stories, their curses were locked in the stone altar, but I carried Vivian's key hidden back in my fist, and I had triggered something that had made Jason scream. Maybe it was not an exit. Maybe it was just a final gesture of sabotage by a desperate mother decades ago. But it was something. In the belly of the situation, a gear had broken, and I was heading straight there. The rain was a cold whip on my face, a deluge that turned the furrows between the vines into dark mud streams. I was running, or at least trying to. My belly turned into a ball of lead in pain. Every contraction a brutal reminder that time had run out in the worst possible way. The image of those vials in the winery, of the heir's blood labels, burned in my retina. My bare feet slipped in the black mud. The abandoned chapel, the refuge Gladys had mentioned, was just a darker silhouette against the stormy sky on the other side of the hill. It felt light years away. The sound came before anything else. The frantic splashing of mud-soaked boots, much faster than my stumbling run. I did not turn around. I knew who it was. The youngest, the most agile. A hand grabbed my shoulder with a pincer grip and spun me around. I lost my balance and fell backward into the mud, a stream of dirty water filling my mouth. Above me, silhouetted against the lightning flashes, was Jason. He was panting, not from exertion, but from a feverish excitement. His face, splattered with mud, was twisted in a grimace of savage triumph. "You run very poorly for a pregnant woman's sister-in-law," he shouted over the roar of the storm. I tried to crawl backward. "Leave me alone, Jason." He laughed, a shrill sound lost in the thunder. "Alone? If now is when everything gets interesting." He knelt, straddling me, pinning me down with his weight. The smell of stale wine, sweat, and madness emanated from him. Marcus wanted to do everything according to the old ritual. Pure boring. But I told him that this time could be better. More potent. "What are you talking about?" I screamed, struggling uselessly beneath him. "About fear," he bellowed, his eyes shining with a demented light. "The old book speaks of the mother's despair." Yes, but I researched in other, even older texts. The true potency, the one that really makes the earth drink and bear monstrous fruit, is in hate, in resentment, in the situation created with rage, not with resignation. He grabbed my chin tightly. "That is why we scared you so much. That is why the stairs, the disgusting broth, the confinement. Not just to prepare the child. To prepare you. So that you would resent us with all your soul. So that your curse when you fell would be the most bitter, the most poisonous. That is the essence we want for the new harvest." His words hit me harder than the rain. It was not just a blind ritual. They had been meticulous. And the architect of that psychological torment was not Marcus with his cold devotion, but this man with his twisted envy. "Why?" I babbled. "Why make it more cruel?" Jason's smile vanished, morphing into a mask of pure resentment. "Because Marcus always gets everything. The eldest. The legal heir to the wineries, my father's respect, and now the heir to the pact. Brandon and I, just shadows, helpers, the younger brothers who ensure the glorious Marcus fulfills his destiny." He spat near my head. "But if the ritual is more potent, if the coming harvest is the best in history, who do you think will get the credit? Who directed the orchestra of terror? Me. That way, finally, our father from his grave will see who the truly strong son is, who deserved to be the first." It was pathetic. Terrifying, but pathetic. All this horror, for the envy of a younger son toward his brother, for a dead father's desire for recognition. "You have gone too far." I spat at him. "I am a visionary," he corrected, infuriated. "And you, poor fool, have been perfect. Your hate, I feel it, it is delicious. Now unfortunately the plan has changed. We cannot wait for the moon. With the police called and the winery half collapsed, we have to speed up the process." From his belt he drew something that gleamed. The ritual knife. The situation will be here in the mud, under the rain. It will be poetic. Your essence will feed the roots directly. He raised the knife. A lightning bolt illuminated the blade. I closed my eyes, a scream caught in my throat, my arms instinctively crossed over my belly. The blow never came. Instead, I heard a dull thud, a grunt of surprise and pain from Jason, and his weight disappeared from off me. I opened my eyes. Brandon stood there, panting, soaking wet, holding a piece of wood with a long rusty nail in it like a makeshift club. Jason rolled in the mud a few yards away, clutching his side. Brandon, what? What are you doing? Jason roared, his eyes wide with disbelief. Brandon did not look at him. He looked at me. His face, always so impassive, was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, fear, and a fierce determination. Get up, Sophia, he said, his voice raspy from effort. Run to the chapel now. I did not have to be told twice. I painfully rolled to my side and got on my knees. Jason was already getting up, his fury overcoming the pain. Traitor, he yelled, spitting mud. You have always been a coward. Now you are pitiful. She is just a woman, a vessel. It is not that, Brandon said, placing himself between Jason and me. His broad body blocked the path. It is that your improvement of the ritual is selfish stupidity. You have read forbidden texts. You altered the formulas of the broth. You have angered the earth, you have not fed it. The cave-in in the winery was not an accident, it was a warning. Those are old wives' superstitions. Jason shrieked, brandishing the knife. The power is in excess, in chaos. The power is in balance. Brandon roared. And for the first time I saw passion in him, the passion of a fanatic seeing his faith desecrated. You ruin everything with your greed. This ritual is not for you, it is for the family. And she must be in the sacred place, not here in the mud like an animal. While they argued, two fanatics fighting over the orthodoxy of their horror, I managed to stand up. I took a step back, then another. The chapel. I had to reach the chapel. Jason saw my movement. With a scream of rage he lunged not at Brandon, but dodging him toward me. Brandon reacted, throwing himself at his side. The two brothers collided violently, rolling in the muddy ground. A tangle of limbs, screams, and flashing steel. I could not look away. They struggled. A tragic accident occurred during their fight. Brandon had let go and was backing away, staring at his own hands as if he could not believe what they had done. Brother, Jason mumbled with a bubbling voice. Brandon looked up at me. Our eyes met through the curtain of rain. In his there was no longer fanaticism, nor calculation, not even determination. Just a stunned emptiness and a childlike fear. I am sorry, he said, but I did not know if he was saying it to me, to Jason, or to the angry sky. Everything has gone wrong. He poisoned the tradition. I just wanted to fulfill the duty the right way. Not like this. A contraction stronger than all the previous ones doubled me over at the waist, tearing a scream from me. I felt a sudden warm wetness running down my legs. It was not mud. It was the amniotic sac breaking. It is coming, I groaned, collapsing against the trunk of an old vine. Brandon blinked as if coming out of a trance. He looked at his injured brother, then at me, writhing in pain. Something changed in his expression. The emptiness filled with a practical urgency, cold but different. You will not make it to the chapel, his voice stated, recovering some of its usual flat tone. He walked toward me, stepping around Jason's body. I cringed but had no strength to flee. He knelt beside me. He did not touch me. The child is coming now. You will need help here. Both of you. That was not the plan. He paused, swallowing hard. Gladys, the old woman. She knows about births, she has things in the chapel. A telephone to call a trusted midwife from outside. He looked at me and it was the strangest look I had seen in him. It was almost human, almost compassionate, but tinged with a brutal pragmatism. I will help you get there. Not for you. For the child. So the child is born right. Alive. The ritual. Maybe something can be saved. Or maybe. He looked toward the house where lights were moving like restless fireflies. Maybe Marcus no longer deserves anything. I understood nothing. He was helping me for the sake of a ritual that was already stained, or was there something else? I had no choice. I nodded weakly. He nodded too, as if sealing a macabre agreement. Then, with a strength that seemed unaffected by the fight, he lifted me into his arms like a bundle. I screamed in pain. He walked through the vineyard, carrying me, walking away from the scene, toward the dark silhouette of the abandoned chapel. Why? I managed to ask with my head resting on his wet shoulder. He did not look down. He kept walking with a steady pace. Because Jason was right about one thing, his voice said, almost lost in the wind. Marcus always gets the credit. But he was wrong about everything else. The pact is real, but the family is rotten from the inside. Maybe a new beginning. With a living heir, but raised far from here, far from us. He did not finish the sentence. I did not know if I was facing a repentant man, a fanatic looking for a twisted way out, or simply the younger brother who, with his rival brother gone, finally saw a chance to have some control. We arrived at the rotting wooden door of the chapel. He pushed it with his shoulder. It gave way with a groan. Inside it was even darker than outside, and it smelled of stale incense, dust, and dampness. At the back, a faint glow of a candle. "Gladys," Brandon called, his voice echoing in the empty space. "I bring you the girl. Do what you promised." From the shadows, Gladys's hunched figure emerged, her wrinkled face illuminated by the flame she carried. Her eyes went from Brandon to me in his arms and darkened with concern. "Put her here," she ordered, pointing to a pile of clean, old blankets on the floor, near a camping heater giving off faint warmth. "And then leave Brandon Reynolds. Your part here is done." Brandon set me down with surprising gentleness on the blankets. He straightened up, looking at both of us. He seemed to want to say something else, but just nodded. As he turned toward the door, his gaze rested on me one last time. "The child must live," he said, and it was an order, not a hope. Then he melted into the darkness of the door and disappeared into the storm. Gladys knelt beside me, her cold, bony hands feeling my belly. "The baby is coming, girl, and coming fast. This has completely gone wrong. Everything." Her eyes shone with tears in the gloom. "But you are safe here. For now." He was right about something. I called a midwife, a trusted one. "She is on her way. But until she gets here, it is you and me." Another contraction, the strongest one yet, arched my back. A heartrending scream escaped my lips, echoing in the empty nave of the abandoned chapel. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, another battle, the oldest and most visceral, was beginning. And somewhere between the mud and the rain lay the aftermath of the confrontation, while the other disappeared into the night, taking with him the last shreds of a centuries-old secret that now, with the arrival of a new life amid the ruin, perhaps could finally be broken. A year later, the California sun beat down heavily on the town, but Oak Ridge Street was in the shade, a shade of murmurs and furtive glances. Sophia walked down it, but I was not the same. The woman carrying her 1-year-old daughter, Grace, in her arms had a straight back and a gaze as cold as the stainless steel of an operating room. Grace, with her dark eyes like her father's, but with a spark of defiance that was entirely mine, looked at the world with curiosity. A year in hiding in San Francisco with Gladys's niece. A year of therapies, of endless statements to a special unit of investigators brought in from outside the region. A year of unearthing secrets. The diaries of the attic women. The empty vial with my name. The book of the pact. And the samples. The terrible samples that a brave forensic scientist had extracted from the vials in the old winery. DNA. Irrefutable proof. The Reynolds house looked like a ghost of itself. The windows blind. The garden dry, the front door sealed with the yellow and black crest of justice. I did not go there. I went to the town square, where a year earlier Gladys had given me the warning. Now a white tent and tables set up for a press conference occupied the space. Journalists from San Francisco, from Sacramento, even from farther away, stirred the quiet air with their murmurs and their cameras. The whole town was there huddled together, with faces of disbelief, shame and morbid curiosity. Detective Frank Harlan had been the first to fall. Suspension of employment and salary. Investigation for cover-up. Then Brandon had turned himself in the morning after the storm, covered in mud. His testimony, cold and methodical, was the nail in the coffin. He confirmed everything. The pact, the generations of situations, Jason's obsession. His confession did not seek mercy. He only seemed to want to unload the weight of centuries. And Marcus, my beautiful, kind, monstrous Marcus, arrested in the winery trying to save some of his precious vials from the partial cave-in my key had caused. He was tried for attempted harm to the child, kidnapping, and for being an accomplice in historical situations. Never, he declared, never did he look me in the eye during the quick, high-profile trial held in the county courthouse. His sentence: confinement in a maximum security facility. The Reynolds Winery intervened. Its famous wine, Ayer's Blood, withdrawn from the market and destroyed by court order. 13 vials were found. 13 little Ayers. They placed me behind the table in front of the microphones. Grace dozed in a baby carrier against my chest. Next to me the prosecutor, a young woman with a severe expression, and the psychologist who had helped me. On the other side, empty, the chair where Gladys should be. She had passed away 2 months ago. At peace, her niece told me, after knowing the proof was on its way. My debt is settled. Those were her last words. The prosecutor spoke first, detailing with clinical rawness the findings, the diaries, the forensic reports, the structure of the family pact. The town listened in dead silence. Some older women wept quietly. Some men looked at the ground. Then it was my turn. I did not read a statement. I looked at the crowd, at the cameras, and spoke directly. My name is Sophia Reynolds. A year ago, my husband Marcus Reynolds and his brothers Brandon and Jason tried to harm my daughter Grace before she was born for a ritual. A ritual that his family has repeated for generations, endangering their firstborns to, according to a dark belief, fertilize their vines and get rich. I paused, letting the horror settle. I am not here for revenge. I am here so you know, so the Reynolds name is never again associated with prestige or good wine, but with infamy and a serious situation. And so that no one, never again in this town, looks the other way when they hear a scream in the night. There was an absolute silence. Then the flood of questions. I answered them one by one in a calm voice. Yes, there was proof. Yes, Marcus was in prison. Yes, Brandon was cooperating. No, I did not know where my mother-in-law Vivian was buried, nor the others, perhaps under the vines. That provoked a murmur of horror. At the end, a local journalist, an older man with a bitter face, asked, "Mrs. Reynolds, and what will become of the winery? Of those lands? They have provided jobs for this town for centuries." I stared hard at the man. The lands are being expropriated by the state. Their future is being studied. But I will tell you one thing, never, as long as I live, will I allow a single drop of the poison they called Ayer's Blood to be bottled again. That wine was the liquid tomb of innocent children, and its glory a rotten lie. The press conference ended. People dispersed in groups talking in low voices. I felt looks of pity, of curiosity, some of resentment. I did not care. I had planted my truth like a new bitter vine in the heart of the town. A month later I got the call. Marcus had been found in his cell at dawn. He had ended his life with the sheets. He left no note, only a winery ledger open to the page of the harvest the year he was born. A record harvest. I did not feel relief, I did not feel sadness. I felt the echo of a distant door slamming, the bottom of a very deep well. The day they demolished the chimney of the old winery, the visible symbol of the complex, I went. I brought Grace. I watched from afar with a small group of onlookers. When the stone structure came down with a dull crash and a cloud of dust, Grace, in my arms, pointed with her chubby little hand and said her first clear word, "Fallen." I nodded, kissing her soft head. Yes, honey, fallen. The final act I did alone. An autumn afternoon, when the intervened vines were beginning to lose their leaves, I went to the town cemetery. In a new separate corner without a flashy headstone, just a simple slab, Marcus was buried, and next to him a smaller, unnamed grave where they had symbolically deposited the remains from the 13 vials after the forensic tests. From my purse I took out a bottle. It was the only one that had been saved from destruction, by my express request as evidence. A bottle of Ayer's Blood. Harvest from the year Marcus was born. The label, already yellowed, showed the family crest. I looked at the bottle, then at the grave without flowers. I said nothing. There were no words for that emptiness. With a sudden movement, I uncorked the bottle. The cork came out with a dry pop that echoed in the silence of the graveyard. I did not drink. I tilted the bottle and poured the thick, dark red liquid, almost black, directly onto the fresh earth of his grave. The wine, the famous, the legendary, was absorbed into the eager earth, staining it a darker color. It was not a toast. It was an exorcism, a symbolic return of all that evil, of all that pain to the earth that had spawned it, so it could digest it, so it could end it with its indifference. When the bottle was empty, I dropped it on the slab. It did not break. It rolled with a hollow sound and stopped against the nameless stone. I turned around and walked away. I did not look back. The air smelled of damp earth and dry leaves, the normal smell of an ordinary autumn. Behind me, the dark stain on the grave's earth began to dry under the weak sun. Grace was waiting for me with Gladys's niece at the entrance to the town. I was going to start a new life far from there with a different last name, hers. But before leaving, I needed to do that. To close the circle, to pour the last gulp of the curse into the very root of the horror. As I walked toward my daughter, who held out her little arms to me, I knew the story of the Reynolds, their pact of essence and earth, was over. Not with a ritual under the moon, but with the simple act of a mother who chose life and let the most precious wine rot in silence on the grave of her past. No. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.